Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about player characters in the position of progenitors, creators of life, and the deep philosophical areas that Dungeons and Dragons takes us to when it puts player characters in the position of progenitors. So this is happening a lot in Dungeons and Dragons. You can see that Dungeons and Dragons is taking up this question of progenitation, right? Of creating life, and I think the reason it's doing it is D&D is it's a carousel, okay? Dungeons and Dragons is on one side of the carousel and IRL is on the other side of the carousel. And Dungeons and Dragons teaches us about our lives and teaches us how to be better humans. And we play and then we look at IRL, real life, in order to play Dungeons and Dragons better and in order to be better dungeon masters, right? So this all started with the Warforged, right? So the Warforged are they are playable player characters who were forged for war, right? And so it tells it puts the player characters on notice. Hey, what do you do when you encounter something that looks like a construct, looks like a thing, but it has life within it? But its purpose, its creators created it for a horrible purpose. How do you interact with this thing, right? It is incredible. We have this question right now. So humans are quite literally looking at this question up close. And so we're doing it with cloning, right? So there are already reports that the first clones have been born on Earth, right? And so, we as humans are like, whoa, and actually the reports that said that in pretty large mainstream media were like, this was done without anyone's permission, without any nation's permission, and it was done rogue, right? And now we have questions of, hey, should we clone ourselves and make fully sentient clones of ourselves? And the other one is, should we make non-sentient clones and harvest them for organs, right? So this question is real in IRL, and Dungeons & Dragons puts this question right in front of player characters. And so, and I recently had this question come up in my game when one of my Strixhaven professors created the first Art Forged. So the Warforged were forged for art. The Art Forged were forged for beauty. So we had an elf artificer who created a new form of life, right? So these questions are happening at actual Dungeons & Dragons tables, and deep philosophical questions about the nature of humanity, humanity's right to create, the limits of its rights to create new life. These discussions are being had at Dungeons & Dragons tables. And I will tell you right now, I don't doubt for 1 minute that these conversations happening at Dungeons & Dragons tables are more meaningful and more relevant and probably more ethical than anything you would find in a science lab or frankly even in Ivy League colleges. And that's because Dungeons & Dragons is truly amazing, right? So one of the things I was thinking about is, I just watched Pinocchio 2022. Every single Dungeon Master needs to watch Pinocchio 2022 in order to understand Warforged. The Warforged are an incredibly complex player character race, right? And in order to really understand them, you need to watch Pinocchio 2022 because Pinocchio is toy forged. And he is attempting to be a real boy, right? And every single thing he goes through is completely relevant to the journey a Warforged goes for. So if you're a Dungeon Master or a player who, you're going to have a Warforged next to you, you're going to play one. If you're a Dungeon Master, you definitely need to fully understand the Warforged. And so you really need to watch Pinocchio 2022. And Pinocchio 2022 took the question even further. It was like, hey, we know we can create life, but what about life created in the image of? So Pinocchio 2022 has this character called Fabiana, and she is a human girl who creates a puppet named Sabina, but she makes it in her own likeness, right? So here she's created this puppet, and she's bringing it to life to interact with Pinocchio, and Pinocchio, I ship it, he likes Sabina, right? It's pretty clear, right? But the question is, and here we also see Sabina being brought to life in a different way, not with life infused in it, but life given to it for temporary. And as soon as Fabiana drops the controller on Sabina, she no longer functions, right? And so the reality is there are huge questions that are introduced by Pinocchio 2022. And I think, so the Warforged is saying, hey, what do we do with lives that have been created? And Pinocchio 2022 challenges every dungeon master with the question of, well, what happens then if you take it one step further and you don't just forge a weapon, but you forge something in the likeness of yourself? Does that thing then have a responsibility, a duty, any obligation to uphold your values because it was forged in the likeness of you? I think the answer is yes for every dungeon master. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.